Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business.
Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. Joining Michael on the show today is Kenny Goldman, who is the CEO and co-founder of Kicksaw, a fractional sales ops consulting practice that helps companies scale with Salesforce. His clients include big companies like AT&T, Typeform, Vidyard, and many more. Now, as you'll hear, Kenny emphasizes the difficulties around scaling a business and the challenges that come with going from 6 to 7 figures, and having someone by your side to help you see things that you don't is an imperative if you're looking to grow your consulting firm. If you want to work directly with the consulting success team and receive personalized coaching and support to optimize and grow your business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com/grow to learn more and apply today. Also, a quick reminder, if you leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts of this podcast, you're not only going to get a free ebook, but also you're going to enter a draw to win the Momentum course. And all you have to do is send an email with evidence of the review over to contest@consultingsuccess.com. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about what you're going to learn in today's episode. The first being how to elevate your practice to surpass the 6-figure mark, how to strategically determine the optimal time to integrate technology and systems, how to build and sustain meaningful partnerships with large enterprises, how to implement strategies to reduce customer churn, particularly with key accounts, how to prioritize crafting a consistently exceptional experience for all of your clients, and lastly, how to ensure your services are priced both competitively and sustainably. Here to share with you his story and insights is Kenny Goldman. Enjoy.
Kenny, let's just start off and have you explain what is Kicksaw.
There's so many ways that I can take the answer and dive into different paths, but at the highest, most basic level, Kicksaw is a Salesforce consulting partner. We help companies with anything and everything, for the most part, that pertains to their Salesforce investment, but doesn't just limit us to Salesforce integrations, third-party systems, so on and so forth.
You co-founded a few businesses before Kicksaw. And then in 2018, you started Kicksaw. Why 2018? What was going on? What made you decide to start this specific consulting business?
It was very organic. There was no intent between my co-founder and I to really take this to where it is today. We actually started working together in 2017. And so this is pretty unique. I co-founded Kicksaw with someone I'd never met in person before. Kyle Morris, he's based out of Bend, Oregon, Central Oregon. I'm in Toronto. We live in totally different countries, opposite sides of the country, so to speak. We had worked together because I was working at a company called Hired, and I brought him on as like a contractor consultant to help guide me and support me, and we developed a good relationship. And then he started to do freelancing. I joined him and worked for him for the better half of a year. And we got to a point where we're starting to actually see an influx of business, all of which were centered around a few AEs specifically out in California, San Francisco. And that introduced us to the Salesforce path. Even before then, there were 2 things that were happening that required us to actually form the business. One was we had clients saying, hey, my boss won't let me sign a document with just Kenny or Kyle. You need a company, you need insurance, we need something a little bit more tangible. And then secondly, we went to go make our first hire, and they came back the next day and said, my wife won't let me quit a job to just join 2 dudes freelancing. I need you to contribute to my 401k. I need benefits. I need a website. Like, I need to be able to tell my kids what I do. I need something. We were starting to feel the pressures of just being freelancers that we decided to actually incorporate the company, create Kicksaw, and go from there.
And how far along were you at that point when you're thinking about making that first hire? People both on the client side as well as prospective employees in the company are saying you guys need to be a little bit more legitimate. Like, where were you revenue-wise, and how far into this were you at that point?
Maybe $500,000 in rev, in and around that range. A handful of clients, I would say maybe 6 to 10 clients. And it was just Kyle and I. Maybe I've had a couple freelancers here and there, but one of those freelancers was someone we ended up bringing on full time.
Is there anything about that you would do differently? And I'm asking from the angle or perspective of, I love what you just said right now, which is, so you didn't have the website, you weren't very formal, you didn't have all the probably usual like business plans and processes and systems. Like you were out there selling, delivering, obviously not just with one client. Like some people say $250,000 a year, but I had one client. Essentially, I just had a job. You had multiple actual 5 to 10 clients, $500,000 in revenue, but you still were missing a lot of the things that a typical consultant business owner would think that they need to have in order to even reach $500,000 in revenue. Looking back now, is there anything that you would do differently about what you did, or how do you feel about that?
I don't think so. I think we went in with very low expectations and we enjoyed what we loved to do. We made sufficient money that allowed us to do what we wanted to do. But our desire to just continue to grow this thing and organically continue to follow where it's taking us is what brought us to where we are today. But it wasn't of a desire to turn this into a $10 million company at that time. For us, the biggest things that Kyle and I really did was, I think what went well and what I would make sure to continue to do the next time around is we were very aligned on what our philosophies were, our beliefs, our values, the type of organization we wanted to run, whether it was 2 people or 200 people. And that's kept us going and allowed us to move at the pace we were moving at. But we always say perfect is the enemy of good. A lot of these processes and systems we didn't have up and running. And nor would I recommend that you try to over-engineer a solution. We were on Excel sheets for a long time before we moved to things like QuickBooks and Salesforce and other systems and project management tools. And that got us very far and we were successful. And then eventually we started to formalize things, especially as you bring on people.
Why do you think you were so successful to get to $500,000 without a lot of the things that people think that you need to have? What led to that?
First and foremost is delivery, because without delivering on the value that you're communicating, it's hard for you to retain clients and be able to maintain that revenue while you go search for new revenue. If you've got a faucet or a leaky bucket problem, then you're consistently going to be refilling that bucket with new clients and it's unsustainable. And eventually you're not going to make it.
But why were people even coming to you? Like, I mean, so yeah, delivery obviously is important, but why were they coming to you if you didn't have necessarily a lot of these things that people think that you need to have?
Well, I think, and even to this day, our business is 100% inbound. Back then, our business was 100% inbound, but just coming from the small select clients that we had and making those asks of saying, hey, do you know? Or they were leaving and joining another job. And that just landed us a couple other clients. The second thing beyond just delivering at a really high degree, quality is sales. My background is in sales. I love selling. I'm consistently selling even to this day. And we're very mature and have sophisticated sales processes and motions and treat it very seriously at Kicksaw. We track things appropriately. We have a process that we follow. And I think that's been a key part of our success too, which is while we're still inbound, we still take sales very seriously and go through that process with clients and try to deliver that amazing experience.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to make a little note there. I want to come back to have you share a little bit more of what that process actually looks like, metrics that you track, things of that nature. To zoom out for a moment, you're a top Salesforce consulting partner. What does that actually mean?
It's a good question. I think it means different things to different people. One of the things that the Salesforce industry, and by industry, I mean specifically clients and Salesforce themselves, particularly like or look for in a partner is domain expertise. Salesforce looks for it because their clients look for it. If I'm a tech company and I'm expecting to build in concepts that pertain to SaaS, like ARR metrics and booking and MRR and ACV, TCV, and all in net retention revenue, and I wanted to start tracking all these things and understand how they play in together, I'm going to look for a partner that can help guide me through that process and understand what I'm looking for. I don't have to reinvent the wheel or learn on someone's dime. Domain expertise is key. Communicating that and conveying that in a sales call, but also through collateral into Salesforce is extremely important. And then like any other business social, you've got to have clientele. And one of the things that we're fortunate about is our network was primarily in the Bay Area. And when you have certain clients like Trip Actions back in the day, or my background, I came from Vidyard, they were a client. These are more well-known SaaS companies that were known entities in the market. When you show them and have social proof of what those companies are doing, most other earlier stage tech companies want to replicate what they did. We can implement that same vision and capability.
When you talk the importance of domain expertise and also having that social proof, so client examples, case studies to support that, your background, there's tech there. You've worked with companies like Vidyard, SaaS company. But I know today, right, the domain kind of expertise and what you are known for inside of the Salesforce ecosystem is not only tech. I mean, tech is one of the areas, but it's also health and life sciences. Where does that come from? And Was that there at the beginning, or is that something that evolved and developed after the initial tech focus?
It definitely evolved over time. We started, and Salesforce's HLS in splitting out in industries is also relatively new. Health Cloud is a product that only came out in the market in 2016, 2017, just around the time we became a firm, actually. It's not like it's a sophisticated product and it's been around for decades. Salesforce too is still figuring out health and life sciences. But when we started, we had this select group of clients that were specifically in the health tech space. And that's how we broke into our niche in Salesforce, which is we're particularly good at tech. And we've worked with these health tech companies that sell into different industries or different types of groups, whether it's B2B or B2C, particularly offering health tech solutions. So that's how we broke into that. And then naturally, we started to get introduced through a small introduction here into a med device company. And so they had an element of software, but they also had hardware that they sold as well. We applied similar models and learned and figured that out. And then that naturally transpired into working directly with providers like med spas or things like that. But a lot of it was seeing what other people did in the past, what good looks like, and hiring people with that domain expertise to come into Kicksaw, teach us and give us that skill set so that we can bring them to our clients as they were coming to us. And I was trying to balance to that. But we also struggled with saying no to some of those deals. And if we weren't capable of doing it, because it only takes one deal for Salesforce, for something to go wrong for Salesforce to hear about it, for it to create a ripple effect internally. So we want to be very mindful about making sure to take on the right deals early on, especially.
Talking about the partnership or the collaboration with Salesforce, or I guess how you're positioned as being one of the top partners there, what are some mistakes? Like people often, I think, make mistakes when they enter into partnerships, especially when they're looking to work with larger organizations. They have a lot of these dreams and beliefs of like how wonderful things will be. And I'm just wondering from your own experience, are there any mistakes or lessons that you've learned in terms of the partnership, either with Salesforce or a company like that, that you would encourage people to avoid or at least be aware of?
Salesforce is a unique ecosystem. It's very rewarding. There's a lot of opportunities as a partner, but it's unique in the sense of it's a little bit more developed and reliant on partners in other ecosystems. You take a look at AWS or Microsoft or even some smaller tech companies out there. They either provide their own professional services. There isn't as much of a professional services market out there, or they don't lean on partners and bring them into deals as frequently as they would, as Salesforce would. It's not a model that can be applied where if you're a partner of SAP or things like that, you'll find the same success in the Salesforce ecosystem. It is certainly unique. And a lot of it is building that brand loyalty and recognition across Salesforce. When I take a look at our business, we've got our clients, the ones that pay us and the ones that we're beholden to doing great quality work for. But I look at Salesforce as a client too. They're a channel for us, and they're a client that we want to maintain relationships with and market to and sell to just as much as we do any sort of other marketing initiatives. We're marketing to Salesforce consistently to make sure that we're top of mind and thought of across the entire organization.
How do you do that? Because I think some people will be listening to this and going, okay, I also see an opportunity for us, given in our industry, to partner with X organization, software vendor, whatever it might be. What are those best practices? How do you, in your case, market to Salesforce or build that relationship or sell to it? Or what have you kind of identified as the best practices or things that you consistently do that deliver an impact or have an impact?
One of the first things that I did that many founders don't do is go to the market and see what other people have done. You'd be surprised at how often other people who've been in your shoes once upon a time are willing to give back or share with you tips and tricks and feedback. And I went out and I sought other CEOs, some of which that are still actively in the Salesforce ecosystem, some of which that have sold and are no longer here. And I've just asked them how they've done it. And I got a lot of feedback, and I was able to develop my own perspective and thoughts based on how I viewed the market and my learnings. But I was able to take small nuggets of what they've said and applied it to our process. So number one was, how do you level up really quickly? Just go ask people who've done it before. Number two was just putting on my sales hat. I went to different AEs and RVPs and AVPs, and I just asked them. I just sat with them. I bought them coffee, whatever it is. I went to the office, I met with them, and I just sat there for 30 minutes and I understand how they thought and what they cared about. And like any ICP, this customer profile has their own aspects that they care about and own respective agendas, as they should. And AEs want to sell. They're commissioned and compensated off selling licenses.
Just to jump and interrupt for once, so just in case people aren't aware, some people, right, account executives, AE is what you're referring to.
Yes. And they have their own agenda and they want to sell and they want to make money as any salesperson would. They also want to be ethical in the process and do lean on partners to say, hey, what's the right product? What's the right approach or things along those lines, upgrading and whatnot. So they're relying on a partner to do that. understanding what A's care about, how they operate, their motivations, and each A is slightly different and each team is slightly different and they're going through separate challenges, and being able to tweak our approach and style to support them, but understanding what they care about and considering that in the deals is super important in the Salesforce ecosystem.
When you first reached out to other companies, CEOs that also had partnerships or more established partnerships, let's say with Salesforce, or you're looking for the best practices or to learn from their experience, were you contacting people that might view you as a competitor, or were you contacting people in different industries? Because if I thinking about, again, those that are joining us, and some people might say like, well, why would somebody tell you what has worked for them? Like, wouldn't there be some competitive issue there? And I want to try and speak to or potentially remove any of those limiting beliefs that people have. Who are you actually contacting? Walk us through that.
Contacting people who were not directly in the Salesforce ecosystem, just owners of consulting companies to see how they operated, how they found customers, how they managed their team metrics and KPIs. And then I was reaching out to Salesforce consulting company CEOs, many of which who were very happy to engage and speak to me. I think that there's definitely a misconception around they're a competitor. The reality is there's enough food, particularly in the Salesforce ecosystem, for everyone to eat. And I don't think anyone feels overly too territorial about it, because at the end of the day, you can sell as much as you want. If you can't deliver, you do a good job, you're just not going to sustain very long in the Salesforce ecosystem. It's certainly big, but it's small enough that I can tell you about a lot of partners and experiences, positive and negative. It's small enough that you hear these stories and word gets around. And it is a relatively tight-knit community. But I've also had the opportunity to go to different Salesforce events, and you just meet the CEOs and you get to know them, and they're great people too. And so I've developed relationships and friendships with some of them. I don't talk to them regularly, but once upon a time, we definitely talk about things. And oftentimes they're bigger than Kicksaw, and they're very open in willingness. And it's created this impact where I too want to be open and willing to other people start their company, and more than happy to give them feedback and suggestions and tips and my experiences.
It's amazing how open people will be and how much they will share with you if you actually ask them. But today, it seems like so many people they just avoid even going out to make that ask. So definitely a big opportunity for many. Some people might view aligning your business so closely with a large player, let's say in this case, Salesforce, as a potential risk. How do you view that? Did you ever consider that? What's kind of your thoughts on partnering, and I don't know if relying is the right word, but having maybe such a big concentration or portion of your overall revenue profit coming directly from one company?
I don't necessarily disagree with that approach. At the end of the day, it's relying on one company. In my perspective, that's the bet we're making. It's no different than some companies building their apps on Apple, or how they track users' activity on websites and changing factors to privacy and whatnot. I think everyone is to some degree reliant, to some degree. Maybe we're more so for Salesforce, but the ecosystem has demonstrated growth and sustained growth. There's a lot of activity out there. Relying and working with partners is already a known concept. It's not like I have to educate people. And frankly, I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and that there's a better way to do what many partners aren't doing already out there. For those factors, I think it's a relatively speaking safer bet. And despite some of the turmoil and their macroeconomic factors, there's still 4,000 Salesforce account executives, and there's still hundreds of thousands of customers spending literally billions of dollars on Salesforce consulting. And so for us to get to $150 million, we're barely even a drop in the bucket at that point. Those are the factors that I use to say, hey, we don't need this thing to be growing 50% year over year for us to be able to grow 100% year over year and sustain and build a profitable company. The market's already there for us.
Hey, it's Michael here, and we'll be right back to the podcast. But first, are you ready to grow, scale, and take your consulting business and marketing to the next level? If so, our Clarity Coaching program may be a great fit for you. You'll work with our experienced team to set up a strategic plan for your business and coach you step by step in areas like how to consistently attract more leads, develop a magnetic message that resonates with your ideal clients, strategically package and position your services, earn higher fees, win more proposals, and scale your business. To find out more about Clarity Coaching and apply, go to consultingsuccess.com and click on coaching.
You talked about sales, even though all of your business or the vast majority is inbound, right? People are coming to you rather than you having to go outbound to them. You still focus a lot on sales, the sales process, the pipeline. If you were to share a couple of things that maybe stand out that you feel are most important, could be metrics that you track or just something, I don't know if it's your secret sauce, but maybe it's just something that you guys do that you feel moves the needle. What would you share around the sales process with others?
I think for us, it's making sure what I focused very heavily on is articulating the competitive advantages or what makes us unique in the ecosystem. A lot of Salesforce consulting partners will focus on things like maybe domain expertise or Salesforce expertise. And those things are very important. But even before you get to that point, I think there's a lot of factors that are important. And the way I think about this is Salesforce as a skill has become somewhat commoditized. There's millions of people that are learning Salesforce every single year. This is circa early 2000s or late 2000s, people learning HTML and CSS. We just go on places like CodePen or CTOs from CodePen and learn how to write HTML and CSS over the course of a month. Well, nowadays, the same thing has happened with Salesforce. You can go on many different sites and learn how to use Salesforce, get certified, go through Trailhead, whatever it may be. And so I think those factors, while still very important and critical to the deal, don't necessarily differentiate you between the other 20 firms that have similar skill sets or expertise. For us, it's focusing on where is there unnecessary friction in the market? What are people not doing today? And how do we address those friction elements? And I'll give you a couple examples. The first is how we approach actively selling in the ecosystem. The way most SIs go to market is they'll hire account executives, and those account executives will sit with Salesforce account executives and they will co-sell the deal. Now, the problem with that is neither of those members are technical. When a client says, how do I solve this problem? Or how have you solved this problem in the past? Or here's our unique scenarios or why we're a special snowflake. No one in that call can actually scope out the level of complexity or the magnitude. And now they've got to play broken telephone, and the partner has to bring in a solution architect into the deal to scope things out, or pre-sales architect, or whatever it might be. We've tried to reduce the friction there and cut that time by introducing a solution engineer as our salesperson. We don't have account executives. We have solution engineers. Solution engineers typically come from in-house or the delivery side, where they can still speak about the business capabilities and help co-sell, but they're also technical enough to be able to understand the dynamics of the deal and be able to size it up relatively quickly after a 30-minute or hour-long call. And that allows us to approach the deal with the right level of precaution or urgency, depending on what we know about it. It allows us to produce statements of work a lot sooner because we don't have to play broken telephone or get multiple people in it. But it allows us to create a valuable impact on that first call and really speak to the needs of a client immediately.
I love that, folks. I mean, you've identified something that a lot of firms are not doing today. You're making that process more efficient and effective and valuable for everybody involved. To play the devil's advocate, let's say that these other firms go, yeah, that's a great idea. We should do that too. We're going to get somebody technical now involved in the sales process. How do you then think about that? I mean, how do you respond? That advantage now shifts because that becomes the status quo where technical people are involved in the sales process.
I think about it as much as it's less about any one thing you do and more about the entire experience. This from one of my mentors, but to me, what makes Kicksaw unique is we consider that the product is the experience. Every interaction that someone has with Kicksaw, every person, every engagement, every email, every document that we produce, every call that we have, that contributes to the experience. We think about the entire experience being the Kicksaw product. And I just frankly don't think, and I've seen this firsthand, most companies just don't consider it that way. As long as we continue to focus on making everything great throughout the entire experience, that our customers, our prospects, Salesforce will start to see that through over and over again. And it's not one particular thing, but how we do everything at Kicksaw that over time will continue to beat out the competition.
So speaking about everything, one thing that's definitely been impacting, seems like probably everybody in the world in one form or another, has been higher inflation. I'm wondering, has this impacted your business in any way? And how are things today as opposed to, let's say, the end of last year, beginning of this year?
I would say the macroeconomic factors have certainly impacted Kicksaw. There's no question about it. Spending is down. People aren't buying software as much as they have been. An important consideration and thought that I've always had with Kicksaw is I really care about optionality. And we've been able to maintain and keep our costs and keep them extremely lean. That's allowed us to be a completely sustainable and profitable organization. Despite this being a relatively slow year and spending has gone down drastically, we've still been profitable every single month this year. And that's given us the optionality to be aggressive, to attack the market differently, to think differently, and not feel like we need to address things from a place of urgency or scarcity, but really focus on what's going to drive the benefit of Kicksaw long-term and our clients long-term and our employees long-term. We try to make sure that we're always in control. And while things haven't been great, how do we take advantage of the situation?
How many people at Kicksaw today?
We're about 75.
And have you had to make adjustments in terms of number of people, headcount, so forth, given budgets being pulled back from clients and just the overall environment? Like, I guess one of my question really, Kenny, is What could you offer specifically, like any examples of what you've done to be able to maintain profitability given the challenges, in the marketplace and the economy overall?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of things, but it just comes down to one of the biggest things that we did was we brought on and made sure to maintain our books and records and had finance at a relatively early size and stage of the company. For instance, I track my budget every single week from a very early period of time at Kicksaw. We were very meticulous about every dollar, how we spent it, how we earned it, projections and forward-looking things, and always being conservative with our estimate. We were always saying we're going to collect less, we're going to spend more, and we're going to make less. And every month we ended up making more, spending less, and collecting more. We were always above our estimates, but we was projected to be lower. And that just made sure that we had the right discipline every single month around the decisions that we made. And we tried not to overspend, we tried not to overhire, things along those lines, but come at it from a frugal standpoint. That was a big key element to how I think we're able to just ensure that we're building for long-term success and stability, not from a place of scarcity. Having finance contribution and having that visibility is super key early on for sure.
How do you approach pricing at Kicksaw? Using hourly fees or using a project-based rate? Or what is the approach that you take to pricing, and how do you think about setting your fees and pricing?
From my standpoint, we have a couple models at Kicksaw. We have our fractional consulting model, which consists of two elements, a monthly fixed fee and time and material on top of it. And the reason why we do that is most consulting firms will estimate their proposal based on taking the build work, and they'll take 10% of that and apply to project management. Well, I'm very different belief there, which is I actually think project management needs to be embedded on every single call. And we need to be working with our clients on not just project management, but strategic guidance on project management, being able to understand their goals and expectations and layer that into the timeline and costs associated with things. If you have a project manager joining every fourth call, it's really hard to maintain that consistency, but also gather all the information appropriately. And that's what happens with clients, which is project managers will join every third, fourth call because that's how they've been allocated. And then you get to 80% of the project timeline, but you've used 120% of the budget and just something's not working well. And that's why so many projects fail. That monthly fixed fee allows us to ensure that the consultant is involved at every stage on every single call. The other belief is that all of the admin hands-on keyboard work is time and material. The addition of those two elements that contribute to our fractional model. And the reason why it's time and material is because I can guarantee that in the past 24 years of Salesforce existing, there has never been a single project out there where 100% of the requirements have been defined up front. It just doesn't exist. It's saying, I want to build a house and assuming that the blueprint you designed in every nook and cranny and every aspect of it stays completely as it just doesn't happen. Stuff happens throughout the build phase. We want to be flexible and nimble enough to anticipate and move in that direction. If we scope out a project very concisely, from day one, we're already going to be misaligned with the client because requirements will inevitably change.
Just to kind of summarize that a little bit, you have a fixed monthly fee or recurring retainer type of fee that is there for the duration of the engagement. And then on top of that, you have time and materials, admin, just additional stuff that comes in that you don't know necessarily how much of that you're going to need. Given what's happening that month in the project, you'll bill. And that secondary amount will change potentially every month, depending on the involvement of your team and time spent. Is that correct?
Correct. But it's correlated to the monthly fee. We have 3 tiers of the monthly fee, and that dictates how much time we can build. Now, of course, there's anomalies to that, but think about it from this. It's almost a little bit like conveyor belt, which is we can only move so much at the top of that downstream you can only create so many of the widgets. From a PM and solution architect standpoint, if we can only gather so many requirements in a week and create so many user stories, we can only complete so many of those user stories. So they're commensurate with one another and definitely apply. Now, sometimes clients might hit us and say, well, we've written all the user requirements. We need more admins than we need PM, at which point we'll make sure to adjust accordingly. But oftentimes clients have less preparation, have done less business discovery or an analysis, and they need us to come in and refine and tweak all these things and contribute with a lot of that work where many partners don't actually do.
Just take this as an example. Again, this is hypothetical, but if your monthly fee was $15,000 a month, is it that the time and materials, that secondary element might be up to $5,000 additional per month, total of up to 20, but it may actually only end up being in 1 month $3,000. And so you would only bill the client $18,000 as opposed to 20.
That's generally correct. There's flexibility with that and they can dictate the T&M portion.
That's helpful because I'm imagining some people going, well, how do you then reassure clients that they're not going to get some crazy bill that essentially that they can prepare for. You're giving them an understanding of what the top might be. You're not going to generally go over that. But if you don't use all of the secondary part of it, then they won't pay.
Exactly. The goal is to try to align the incentives of our consulting team with that of our clients. And the typical consultant at a normal SI, systems integrator, Salesforce SI, is that they're almost entirely compensated or commissioned, or the variable component is off utilization. The problem with utilization, first and foremost, is clients don't give a shit about utilization. Hard stop. They just don't. It doesn't matter to them. Number two is utilization is not a good metric to define client success. Meaning, if I want this project completed and my biggest challenges are oftentimes in non-billing intensive work like training or change management or adoption or things like that, as a consultant, I'm not really incentivized to invest in a lot of that effort because it's not high billable work. We don't want to incentivize our team on utilization. And frankly, we don't track utilization because we think it's a poor determinator to client success. And then you get into things like Thanksgiving or the US holiday. Well, people are out that week. What? You're just not going to get utilization target. It's just a bad metric to determine if the client is happy or not. And it's an internal metric, but it's how a lot of companies operate their machine and what they use to determine success for engagements.
All right, Kenny, I want to thank you for coming on, for sharing. We'll make sure that people can learn more about you and Kicksaw and all the work that you guys do. Before we wrap up, just a couple of final questions. So one, you're co-founder, you have a team of 75 people, you're growing. You also have a young child, as we witnessed just a few moments back, which I love. All good to see that. Share with me one or two things that you do on a consistent basis to just maintain your focus, your high level of productivity, any habits that are part of your life that you feel really make an impact.
Number one is have people that you can talk to. I would not be where I'm at without the right advisor and mentorship and guidance. These are people that have been there, done that can support you and help you and answer questions and just give you direction. And similarly, I've helped them with things, but that's been a huge factor to any successes I've had. Number two is just clear communication with my wife, which is just around expectations around work, timing, how things operate, knowing what she expects, what I expect, what works, what doesn't work. Those things are important in maintaining a really strong personal family life is key to success at work. Three would be sleep. I don't compromise on sleep. Make sure to get my 7 to 8 hours every single night and prioritize that accordingly. And then four, I do have a coach that I work with that I've started to work with over the past year. And that's just given me the environment to speak openly about things without any judgment or concern around confidentiality. As a CEO, I sometimes don't always get the opportunity to talk through things. And I have mentors and advisors, but I also don't want to eat up a ton of their time and engage with them. And it's not always where I get to talk to them about certain topics. And so the coach has given me the opportunity to really invest in understanding how I think, talking about things openly, thinking through things versus bottling it up or keeping it inside.
My final question for you is, over the last 6 months or so, is there a book that you have either read or listened to, fiction or nonfiction, that you just really enjoyed and you think others might too?
There's a few books. I'm just opening up. I started to use this app called Headway, which condenses down the learnings of a book into like just really small snippets. And I'm on the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Really solid book. That's been great. I've really enjoyed that book so far. So that's what comes to mind recently. I'm trying to balance business related content when I'm not working. Fiction is a nice relief, and just getting my mind off things has been great.
What are you reading fiction wise?
Oh, I've got like 3 or 4 books that I'm just going through right now.
What kind of genre?
Drama, mystery, things like that. Some comedic relief gets embedded in there. But those types of books that can read before bed for half an hour, takes my mind totally off things. I can't think of work and it gets me tired. Those have been great.
There we go. All right, Kenny, thanks again so much for coming on. I want to make sure that people can learn more about you, Kicksaw, everything that you all are doing. Where's the one place they should go to find out more?
Honestly, kicksaw.com. It's got everything, all our content. You can sign up for a newsletter. You can hit me up on Drift there. I do respond back to it. I try to centralize everything there. I don't do much on social media because everything I try to push through kicksaw.com. So everything's over there.
Good stuff. Thanks so much, Kenny.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
And there you have it for today's episode between Kenny and Michael. If you enjoyed today's show, then as always, be sure to head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review. And if you do so, as a reminder, we're going to send you a free ebook. All you have to do is send evidence to contest@consultingsuccess.com to claim your free ebook and enter a draw to win the Momentum course. If that's too much work, you can always share this episode out with a friend or colleague you feel like would truly enjoy listening to today's episode. Again, as a reminder, if you want to work directly with the Consulting Success team to receive personalized coaching and support to help you optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com/grow to learn more and apply today. That's the end of the line for us this week. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We're going to be back next week with another one. Until next time.